She does speak.
Now we know.
Incredible. Well, we will give people just a couple of minutes to tune in and let everybody get nice and settled before I start yapping. Um, Rebecca, how's your day been so far?
I just woke up, so I mean, it's like, firstly, I have a sleep disorder. Secondly, like, everybody wants to email me sort of between 10 p.m. and like 4 a.m.
Oh,
Like, is the peak. So it's like really hard, especially like when you're getting all these like emails and messages being like, happy pub day, and you're like, I really need to go to sleep. But if I don't post this stuff now, it's gonna be too late.
oh, time difference challenges, eh? That's
You know, that rotation of the earth is a menace.
Time is a social construct. I don't understand it. Like everyone's talking about Taylor Swift going from like Tokyo to Kansas City and the international date line, and I'm like, this is going right over my head. It's not real to
That's
me.
fine. It's so far because I mean Tokyo is 3 hours behind us, so I know that there's like a lot of time to make it to Kansas for the next day.
you're more on top of it.
Yeah, always on top of this.
Oh,
Are either of you Taylor Swift fans?
I'm not a fan. I'm a
Yeah,
fan.
I'm not a fan either. One year I accidentally got in the like top 1% of listeners on Spotify from like leaving the album on like or not listening to it when Folklore came out because that's when I was writing, so I like didn't have like any awareness of like what was happening around me, and then like getting that message like the end of the year being like you're a major Swiftie.
Especially that album. That's a good album to write to.
Yeah, I
I
mean
wasn't too lucky.
that's my favorite Taylor Swift album.
I
Yeah.
am wearing my Taylor Swift hoodie right now.
Oh, so you're truly a Swiftie.
No, I try to be normal about it. There's so many times I'm not normal about it that I'm like, no, it's chill here. But I
Are you
do have
excited for the new album?
I am the track list is interesting,
Oh yeah, I saw. Yeah, yeah.
but I am excited. And I do have a bunch of there's a sapphic painter who does a lot of oil paintings that are like Taylor Swift songs with the sapphic gaze. And so I have like a bunch of those hanging up in my apartment.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
neat.
Ali Torres, plug for her. She's great.
Look it up. That's neat.
Well,
I was
it
feeling sorry.
oh, I
Don't
was
need my
gonna
commentary on Taylor Swift.
we do love Taylor Swift. This is 34, so I'll go ahead and get us started. Hello and welcome to everyone. My name is Lainey Rose, and I'm the events manager here at East City Bookshop, which is a woman-owned, community-focused indie bookstore located just a few blocks away from the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. We are so excited to be with you all tonight to celebrate the U.S. publication of Greta and Valdin, an irresistible and big-hearted international bestseller that follows a brother and sister as they navigate queerness, multiracial identity, and the big dramas big and small of their entangled, unconventional family, all while flailing their way to love. Our calendar is always full of events at East City Bookshop, and we've got a lot upcoming in February. This week alone, we'll also be hosting Jazz Hammonds tomorrow and Tia Williams the day after in the store, and those events will also be hybrid, so you can watch from home just like you'll be able to tonight. We also have 14 different book clubs at the shop that run the gamut from our new fiction book club to our social justice book club to our romance book club to our queer book club, and way more than that, too. All the information about future events and book club meetings can be found on our website. Before we get started with tonight's event, we have just a couple of housekeeping things. We will have time for questions at the end, so if you have a question that you would like to ask, please put that in the Q&A box so that we can easily see them. We would love for you to keep the chat box for your general enthusiasm. So tell us where you're tuning in from and what your favorite sitcom is. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat. My colleague is monitoring that and can help if necessary. And if you need to purchase a copy of Greta and Valdin or interesting facts about space, you can do so on our website. Just follow the links that are going to be dropped in the chat. But the reason we're here tonight, Rebecca K. Reilly is a Maori novelist from Waitakere, New Zealand. She has a BA in German and European Studies from the University of Auckland and an MA from the International Institute of Modern Letters at Victoria University of Wellington, where she won the Adam Foundation Prize in Creative Writing for 2019. Joining her in conversation is Emily Austin, who is the author of Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, Interesting Facts About Space, and the poetry collection Gay Girl Prayers. She was born in Ontario, Canada, and received 2 writing grants from the Canadian Council for the Arts. She studied English literature and library science at the Western University. She currently lives in Ottawa in the territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. And I'm going to let these 2 lovely authors take it away. I will come back a little bit later for our Q&A, but until then, take it away.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited. I'm so excited to chat with you about your book. I love these characters you created. I find them so deeply endearing. Your novel is so funny and touching and sharp. You write hilarious, offhand humor so well, and I think you balance heavier topics like family and love and relationships so well. I found your book both super entertaining, but also really touching and smart. I read your book a while ago now, but every time someone asks me, what's the last book you read, I pretend it was this one just so I can chat about it. So I'm excited to talk to you about it today. So my first question for you is, can you please share a bit about what inspired this book or how this book came to be?
So I wrote the book in 2019. Yeah, in 2018, I was working in a call center, which I was not good at. Um,
I've
and
also
then
worked in a
I
call center. I get it. Yeah.
it's sort of like you sort of just fall into it. You're like I don't know, I had like graduated from my like honors program, and then applied for like pretty much every job
Right.
and didn't get any until I was like, okay, I need to find a job application that has a test because I will like do well in a test much more than I'll do well in somebody like trying to decide if they like me. Like,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
so I got this job selling train tickets because you had to label a map of Europe. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I just like labeled all the countries and they were like, oh, we've never seen anyone actually do this before. So they gave me the job. But obviously it was like awful. It was just all these
Right. Yeah.
travel agents from around New Zealand like calling up and like yelling at you. Um, about their rich clients like rail journeys because we only sold the train tickets, so someone else was like booking everything else, and then they would be like, we need Florence to Rome, and then they would like call up and be like, why have you sent us these tickets from Firenze to Roma? You're like so incompetent. I can
Right.
tell by
They
your
get
voice
that.
that you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, that's the
This
word.
sort of stuff. Yeah, and so that's what I was doing, and then I got another like similar job that I thought was going to be better but was sort of like worse. And then while I was on leave, they started interviewing people for my job. So I
Oh,
was like, oh, this is over, like this is cancelled. I'm gonna go overseas and then I'm gonna come back and I'm like gonna become a novelist.
okay,
At
good for you.
which point, like all of my friends thought that I had like just totally lost it because I never expressed like an interest in writing
Okay, all right.
before. Because I was like, why would I? Like, why would I tell you guys like I'm gonna go home and like write on my phone
Right,
about
that's my
my
private
little
secret
guys?
hobby.
That's
Yeah.
my private time.
Yeah.
But by that point I was like, whatever. I haven't got anything else going on. And then it just worked out.
Oh, good for you. I love that story. That's awesome. Um, yeah, I worked in a call center too. My call center was like, for some reason, and I think I had to sign something to say I won't admit this, but I don't care because I obviously don't work there anymore. It was I had to cold call Americans to ask them about how they felt about the army, which is weird. I don't know why. You guys should look into that if anyone's on this call. I don't know why they have us doing that. Um, all right, next question. So this
Yeah,
book,
next question.
moving on. Uh, this book is a bestseller in New Zealand, and it's received a lot of really warranted praise there. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your experience sharing it in other parts of the world, like us in North America? How's that been?
Everything is just, it's so much more. Um, I can't even explain it. Like the only way that I can explain it is by this what Julian Baker said in this Apple interview, that she felt like you win the NBA and then you think that's all you can do, and then they tell you that you're going to go to the Olympics.
Oh,
That's what this like feels like, that you write the book, it comes out, it like does really well, you get like a couple of prizes, and then
and
you
now
think there's like, okay, and now I need to write another book. And then you get an email out of nowhere from like my publisher saying, oh, we've got someone's emailed that they want to represent you as an agent, because we don't have agents in New Zealand, you just represent yourself. Which is tricky. And now like on the other side, I'm like, I can't believe that we do this, and I can't believe like so many people I know are just out there
right.
repping themselves. But yeah, so then yeah, especially like my publisher was like, oh, I don't know if you want to go with this person. They've just like cold emailed us. And then I looked into it and I was like, oh, like this person sounds great.
Oh,
And then we sold the book in the UK, and then someone else in the agency was like, oh, I think that we could sell it in the US as well. And I was like, this is too much, guys. Like we don't need to be doing all this. And like,
well,
when
I'm
am I
glad
supposed
they
to
did.
write the second book?
Yeah, this is
But
great.
yeah, it worked out. And I feel like I've been super, super lucky that pretty much like every step of this book's publication, there was like some expectation set of what it was going to be like. And then that was exceeded. Like we were only going to do paperback in the UK, and then they wanted a hardback, and yeah, like just everything like that. I'm like, oh, okay, like yeah, I'll settle for that. And then they're like, actually, that's not happening anymore.
And it's gonna be, oh, that's awesome. I love that. I have a question about this later, but I found the book is really well grounded in the geographic space it's in, and I found that really cool as being someone who's
Mm.
not there. So, but I'll talk to you about that later. Your book mentions that there are two kinds of people in the world: lanyard people and non-lanyard people. Are you a lanyard person?
No.
No, me either.
I think that, and it's like really interesting because I think that the book is pretty negative about lanyard people. It like sets up that like, Greta's like, I'm not a lanyard person. I like love this lanyard person who like treats her like very badly. And
Yeah.
then and I felt like, you're obviously going to portray yourself in like a positive light. And then what a lot of people got from that was like, lanyards are awesome. And then
Yeah.
now I even have like a merch lanyard.
Okay,
Like
I didn't know that. Oh, that's
I
awesome.
can't, yeah, in the UK there are lanyards. So, like
Oh, that's cute. They're
I
great things
can't,
for that. Eh? They always have.
yeah, it's like a cosplay for me though to wear a lanyard.
Now you have to wear. Now you have to be a lanyard person.
I like known for like previously not having a key ring and not having a wallet.
Okay. Yeah.
I would just like be like a pocket
Cards. Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
But every time I would like sort of like get close to any like new people, they would just find this infuriating. So now I have like this sort of like ex-lovers keyring collection.
Well, all right. Interesting. Good question. I also am not a lanyard person. I don't have the confidence to pull it off, I guess. Or, um,
No, I don't have the authority.
yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. I read that this book was titled Vines to begin with, and I wondered if you could talk a bit about the meaning of that title and maybe about the title change and how did you decide on the
Hmm.
title?
Well, what happened was that I wanted to call it Greta and Valdin, and then I was like, everyone's gonna think that I am like some shitty like up herself Salinger impersonator. So I can't do that. And then
Oh,
I was like, well, I should title it something that begins with V. And there was also a quote in the book about like vines like connecting people and stuff,
right.
which is
Yeah.
not in there anymore. Um,
Oh, okay.
so that also doesn't work. But when I went to the first meeting with the New Zealand publisher, because like this is how it works here, is that you kind of get the email being like, do you want to come into our office? And
Oh.
then you just sort of show up, and then they're like, we would give you this much money.
Oh my God, what a process. That's awful. Oh, I would never. You're so
I'm
brave.
like- So
I'd
I
be like,
just
that's
like
not worth it. I'm not going
there's
anywhere.
no I mean there's no other way. So I had spoken to one person who'd done it before and she was like, yeah, I went in, they offered me like this much. And then when I went in, they offered me $500 more. So I was like, okay,
Oh my God, what a process.
this seems good. And they tell you like we'd want to put the book out like at the time next February. That didn't happen because of the pandemic. Yeah, and then so that's what I did. And in the meeting, the publisher was like, "You don't actually want to call it Vines, do you?" And then so I just said no because I wanted to like be agreeable. And then
Right.
I pretended that I didn't know what I wanted to call it for like 6 months.
Okay.
And then I was like, "Okay, well, I'll like take I don't have any ideas. I'll like take suggestions from other people." And then like every suggestion I got was like even worse.
Oh.
I was like, oh, one of them was by the time you read this,
Oh,
which I like sounds like very like murder mystery, like Richard Osman. But also, I was like, I don't remember that being a line in the book. And then when I looked into it, it's like right at the end, and it says, by the time you read this, I hope they're not letting people pay cash on the bus anymore.
what
And I
is
was like, we can't like call, yeah, I said that, but we can't like call the book that.
I'm trying to think of some greater, I guess there is sort of like I could find some way to make that make sense. Yeah.
Like passing of time, like I don't
Right.
know, but I
Yeah.
was like, okay, we
I
should
love
just
it.
call it Greta and Valdin.
Good for you. It's a good title. All right. Your book balances humor and lively, likable characters with deeper themes like love, family, relationships, and race really well. I laughed out loud when Veldin forgets the phonetic alphabet, for example, and says D like eternal damnation.
Because you would know from the call center.
Yeah. And there's lots of quippy lines like that I found so funny, like the dialogue so funny, and there's just like humor baked into so much of it. So my question is, could you talk a little bit about humor and the role that plays in this book?
Um, yeah, I think it's like it is interesting because like sometimes obviously I'm like trying to write a good joke. I'm like, okay, like what how can they call it like punch ups? Like
Right.
learn this from that program about that person who helps that older person with their comedy and I go hacks. I learned this from
Oh
hacks.
yeah. Oh, it's awesome. Yeah,
Um like sometimes I'm doing that and then sometimes I'm not doing that. I think I'm being so serious. And then when other people read it, they're like, this is hilarious. This would never happen to a real person. And I'm like,
this has happened to
this would
me.
happen to a normal person. But yeah, I don't know. People like often like bring up that they think that the book is really funny. And I think that maybe just a lot of books are sad.
Yeah. They're
Because
sad.
like a lot of yeah, I mean a lot of like TV shows are funny. Like not, at the moment, not a lot of movies are funny, but I think that's just sort of like where the culture is at the moment.
Right.
And so if you write something that is like pretty funny, it like seems sort of very
Hysterical. Yeah.
like
In the bleakness of
gist-like.
the world. Yeah. It's like that's the funniest thing I've ever I think it really is funny though. I think there's like
Oh,
I was
thank
laughing
you.
out loud multiple times, and I think it's funny, like the way that it's funny is so like in the dialogue. And anyways, I won't I know it's kind of awkward when someone just tells you you're funny to you a bunch, but very funny.
It's
Um
all right. No,
okay, good.
I don't have
Um
anything else on.
In the novel, Greta says, I wonder what plant I would be if I were a plant. Maybe something with big leaves that droop sulkily if not provided with the exact right amount of water and light. I wondered if you were a plant, what plant would you be?
Oh.
Sorry if this is like before we started this
This
chat, we were talking about questions that were sometimes given with no expectation. This maybe is one of those. I'm sorry.
um
Got a lot of plants behind you, Ray.
yeah, I've got a lot. This is like a quarter of the plants, and I do not have a big house. Which one of these plants would I be? I think that I would be. I think I would be one of those plants that's. I was going to say something really insulting about myself.
Hear
I was.
it.
I don't even feel like this. I was going to say one of those ones that's like expensive and like hard to find, but then when you get it, you're like, this is not that great.
Oh no.
That's not how I feel. I don't know. I was like, I saw a variegated Monstera at the mall recently, and I was like, a couple of years ago these were $5,000, and now you can get them at the mall for $100.
Oh, interesting. All right. I'm not up on plant costs, but that's interesting.
Plants are really expensive in New Zealand because we don't have a land border.
Oh.
So
Oh,
we have
well
like
then,
really, really
well,
strict
great.
biosecurity. So you can't like bring in plants or food or animals or anything,
That
which
makes a lot of
means
sense. So you have
that
native
people
plants mostly. Is that
we have we have native plants. I think we have native plants, we also have a lot of imported plants, but it's sort of the same ones that have been brought over
that
a
are
long
like
time
really
ago.
contained? Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
or ones that people have like paid a lot of money to like import, and that's why they're expensive. This still did not answer the question. I
Oh,
don't know. I'm
well,
not
we'll get some
sure.
insight.
I see a
Okay.
lot about plants anyway.
I mean, yeah, that's good enough. That's a good enough answer. Now we have a little insight about plants in New Zealand. Um, I wondered, okay, the characters in your book are also well developed and feel really distinct and alive. I was wondering if you have a favorite character in this book.
Yeah, I do. Sorry to say it like that. Um, I think, yeah, that's also really interesting for me because I think in the like initial reaction, a lot of people assume that I like identified most with Greta because
Right,
like gender stuff,
right.
but I like identify most like as their mom.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And my favorite, but like also like out of Greta and Valdin, I was like, I'm definitely more of a Valdin, without the sort of like hysteria. Or rather like the hysteria for me is like internal, but like maybe if I were a man that I would be more like
You
that.
could
I
wear
don't
your
know.
hysteria on your sleeve a little more.
I
Yeah.
would be able to like
Right.
unmask as
Right,
hysterical.
exactly. Yeah.
um but no, my favorite character is Giuseppe.
Okay.
And it was like very like exciting for me like whenever I got to like write about him, which was like not very much because I was like, this isn't what I've chosen for this book. So I can't just
Great.
be like, and now we're gonna follow this guy around or anything.
I love that. That's interesting. All right. How do you approach creating and developing your characters? Did you like there's a really great cast of characters in this book, and again, they feel like real, they feel so developed and like real people and so distinct from each other. How did you go about creating these?
It takes me so long. It takes me years and years and years
Oh,
to like think of a new character. Like I could never have agreed to a 2 book deal because there's no way that I could write a second book like in 2 years or whatever
right.
those sort of contracts stipulate. I I don't know, like I sort of like see someone like either real person or like a character, and then I'm like, oh, like I need to collect
Oh,
one of those
interesting.
type
Oh, I
for
love that.
my like character box.
Right.
Um, and then I just have to think about them so much. Like everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, like how would my new character like react to this like inconvenience that I'm experiencing? Or, like, would they like this movie? Or would they be very online? Or would they like swimming? Like this sort of stuff. It just sort of like in the back of my head, like all the time before I can start writing. And then when I have to make up a new character, or like on a deadline, I'm like, this is horrible. I don't know this person. I feel like I'm lying to them. I'm like untrue to their personality sorry, it sounds a bit like mystic. I'm like, I don't know this person. Like, how can I write
Cool.
about them? I'm not going to say which characters I had to invent for this
Okay,
book
I was
because
just
then
wondering. I was like,
like, I don't want anyone to like note my sloppy characterization.
I'm sure it wouldn't be. So how long before writing this book were you thinking of those characters?
Well, I used to write about the like the generation of the parents, like starting like when I was at school. This was like
Oh, wow.
2008. It was not great stuff. Like it was like I look back on some of it and it's not that bad. I think you like expect your teenage self to just be like so unbelievably cringy, but also like totally like unskilled. But of course, like if you're 18 years old, you like do know how to write a bit.
Right.
Um, Yeah, and then so like, obviously I've had to change the things about them. I think the like difference between writing like as an adolescent and as an adult is that you just need to like tone down everything so much. I think, well, I don't know if you feel the same, but like writing as a teenager, you're like, and then this person like has, they've got a drug addiction
Right. It's so
and they
yeah,
and
true.
then so this crazy thing happens to them
Oh,
and
poor
then,
kid,
like
it's
they have this
crazy.
massive
Yeah.
fight and then they
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
then they get engaged or like everything
Yeah.
has to be like so extreme because you think like that's what's the
This is
difference
what a book
between
is.
like being me and being an adult and that's like
Yeah.
this is what a book is.
Yeah.
It's like the TV show Skins, like
Right, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Or what's
everything
that
needs to
new
be
one? That new teen show was like that
like
too.
Euphoria.
I think, yeah. Every time, every couple of minutes, I was like, oh man, another person, horrible, violent thing has happened or something. It was too much.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, when I was like 16 or 17, I was like, this is how writing is done.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
someone's like, I'm secretly a spy or
Right. Yeah. There's some
okay,
really
so like any like element of that used to be like part of these characters has been
muted a little.
swiftly
Right. Yeah.
removed.
Ah, that's so interesting though that you've been thinking about them for are you someone who's like are your I don't want to ask you too much about but like your next books, do you plan to reuse characters or do you plan to, like keep
Yeah,
these
I plan to write. I had a plan for two books and now it's like taking me so long. I feel like I'm gonna be too old to write the second book that I thought of. So I was gonna write a book about well, I like still am planning to write a book about two of the characters in this book. And then I was gonna write a campus novel. And now it's like just taking me, I thought of this when I was 27. Now I'm 32 and I'm like, oh my God, like I don't know. Like I went onto the like university campus recently to buy a book and I was like, this is just so alien to me, like how like student life is now compared to when I was there not that long ago, like 2012.
right?
We were all like, we didn't have smartphones.
I
We
think we're the
were,
same
you
age. I have
would
the same experience.
you would
Yeah.
just like hang around in the quad and see who was there and stuff. And there would be like public meetings for like the student council would be like fighting the university about something, and everyone would like go protesting and stuff. And now I'm like, oh, there's like no one here because they're all like doing online stuff all the
Right
time. Like they don't
online.
want
Yeah.
to come in. And whenever there's like an issue that, like the discourse is more like, I don't know if it's like safe for us to like protest in public or whatever
Mhm.
against the
Right.
university. Whereas like I feel like 10 years ago we were like, let's just go and stand on the
Yeah.
street. Like, who
Right.
cares, man? Like, stick it to
Yeah.
the man.
Yeah. So it's a bit
I'm not gonna get doxxed. Like, no one has a camera.
right. Yeah. I'm not going to be photographed doing this. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got like an Instagram account with like 10
Just a picture of
followers because
food. Yeah.
none of my friends know what it is yet.
Yeah, exactly. You think it's just a filter app. That's what happened when I
Mm,
just opened my Instagram. I was like, oh,
like,
I've used this before, and I used it to like edit a picture of something.
like they're not gonna get my last FM.
Yeah. Oh, just time check. Okay. Let's see what questions I have here. I love how I love how queer this book is. I love how there are so many queer characters. I love how it explores the complexity of queerness really well. Something I often think about when I read books or consume shows with queer characters is they're often surrounded by heterosexual people, but in reality, I think queer people are often surrounded by other queer people. So I found
Mm.
that really refreshing, and I wondered why you chose to make the characters in this book so queer.
Yeah, I guess like especially at the time, I like did not know heaps of straight people. I wasn't like hanging out
Right.
with straight people. So yeah, I guess and that seems like a strange way to live. It's like heterosexuality to me. So I just like I don't know, I just don't think of it very much.
Right. Okay.
Um yeah, I guess it didn't come up. But because I was writing this in a workshop with mostly straight people, they were like, oh, like everyone's gay, like even the granddad's gay. I was like, well, look, the granddad is not gay. He is a womanizer.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's part of it. But yeah, and then I like counted and I thought that I think half the characters were queer and half were presumed straight.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's like a fair enough balance. This isn't like a bizarro world where everyone's I don't know, like everyone's bisexual in this new
Right.
world.
Yeah. I love that about it though. I love that it's yeah, like I was saying, it reflects more realistically, I think, to a certain extent. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like felt bad. I like saw an Instagram that was like, I'm so excited to read this book for the bi representation. And I was like, oh, think this book doesn't represent bisexuality like totally like positively. Because I think that like also if I'm representing like a part of my identity, I feel like more free to be like, yeah, it sucks and we're all stupid. Whereas if it's like an identity that I'm like not a part of, then
Oh,
I'm like, oh yeah, and
those are
let's
great. Yeah.
respect them.
Yeah. Show them respect. This person's like me. They're awesome. Yeah.
They're totally on the table to say whatever.
Yeah. This person's just, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Um, all right, just a quick, I think we're almost at, so I'm gonna scroll down to a question. I guess if you could choose one thing for readers to take away from this book, if anything, what would you hope that readers take away from this novel?
I don't know. I don't feel like readers need to take away sort of like a philosophical statement or anything from reading a book. I just hope that
Yeah.
they like enjoy it and like definitely to some extent, I hope that they spread the word that it's like fine to read books that are set in other countries. I think that like
Yeah.
that's been like one of the main questions that I like am being asked at the moment, like, oh, like, are you like scared that like the people won't understand it
Right.
and
I
sort
had
of
a
things like
similar
that?
question I had about that for time, but I love that about this book. I love how you feel like, for me, I guess, because I've never been in the geographic location, and I really felt like I was there, and I loved how you um use like Maori words and things like it felt so I haven't read
Mm.
books that reflect those that experience before, so I love that about this book. I think that is
Yeah, I think that like I didn't know that as well that people didn't like I think that some of the I don't want to say feedback, it feels very Hannah Gadsby, but some of the reception is that people are like, oh, that's like a deliberate choice that she's like chosen to include
right.
these words that are not translated, but that's like actually how pretty much everyone here talks.
Oh, interesting.
We
Right.
actually do use because I think it's like very different than other like colonized indigenous countries that our indigenous population is like between 15 and 20%.
Okay.
So it's like a lot higher than like the States and Canada and Australia. So we do have that language revitalization, and there's only one language as well, which is like different from Australia where they have like hundreds of different indigenous languages. We only have one with like some dialect variation. So we do like it is like standard practice to like email beginning with kia ora and ending with namahi and
Oh,
things like
interesting.
that. So it's like not it was like not a deliberate choice for me to include this. I was like, this is just how people
It's just
talk.
how it is. That's cool though. I love that. I love that we get to see a window into that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and so it was like interesting to see people be like, oh, she like didn't explain it. I was like, I can't imagine like writing the sentence like I cut up some potatoes and kumara and then wrote like in brackets like in
Right.
New
Little
Zealand we call
footnote.
sweet
This is
potatoes
it. Yeah.
kumara. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how am I
No, and
gonna
it
do
makes
that? I
sense.
like
You can,
yeah.
yeah.
And then yeah, and it's like interesting, I think, like from like the dominant culture perspective saying like to like explain that like questioning whether or not I should like explain things about New Zealand more is that I also or like words that I use more I don't know what is like weird or like what is different so much. I think that I think that sometimes people think that we could like turn it off and just
Oh,
like
yeah.
sort of like be like, oh, but I know that you guys call this a shopping cart or whatever.
Right.
It's
Right.
like I know like I mean I know that like a lot of the time from consuming so much like North American media, but I don't always
Not
know
how you're thinking.
that
Yeah.
you don't know this word like clothespin.
Right.
Like that sort of thing. Like, I don't always know, and I'm not, especially like when I wrote this book, I was writing it on a Word document on a MacBook. I wasn't like, oh, the like North American people don't know that we call
Exactly.
Sprite
Yeah.
lemonade. Like,
I better put in with this. Yeah.
yeah.
Aw. Well, according to the little document I was given, I think I was supposed to try to end around 8, so, thanks, I think we can move on to the
Audience Q&A.
yeah.
So haven't already put your question in, please put your question in. I will start with a question I have, which I always love to ask our authors when we do events with them. And I picked this up from another local author, Susie Dumond, which is if you had to pick the perfect environment of which you are envisioning someone reading your book, what would that environment be? Would it be on a train? Would it be cozied up in a coffee shop? Would it be on a stormy day? And for both of you, what environment would you see as the picture perfect environment for reading your books?
Oh, I don't know, like maybe like just between doing other stuff. I think like reading should take away from your life. Should just be like moving. I don't know, at the gym or something. But it's like interesting you brought up trains because the other night I was panicking that for some reason Emily was going to want to talk about trains, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know if it's pronounced via rail or via rail. So I was like
Oh.
watching these videos. And then
Yeah.
like the first two I watched were in French, and I was like, this is not helping me.
It's beer, but
Yeah, I know.
yes. For me, I guess similar. I think like for some reason I think like public transit. Yeah, for some reason, but I don't know why.
Awesome. Well, we will get into some of these questions. We did have an anonymous attendee. We'll start off with a softball question. Do people in New Zealand actually care about the Lord of the Rings?
Like I've seen the first half of the first movie when it came out,
The answer.
when I was in year five. I was 10. It was the like first movie I ever fell asleep in. I like never seen the rest of it. So it's like, but like when you go overseas, people like want to talk to you about it, except for like one beautiful year when Flight of the Conchords was sort of like more popular than Lord of the Rings, and people would like talk to you about that. That was the reprieve. And then ever since then, it's like, oh yeah, like Peter Jackson. It's like the like in our like for us, like Peter Jackson is the terrible sort of like string puller of Wellington who's like behind he had like a puppet mayor who was like controlling the city, and people were like, oh God, like Peter Jackson just like pulled up and like on the street and like parked on the pavement and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, it's a different perspective.
Okay, makes sense. Uh, all right. So let's see. From Amanda Livingston, what are some of your favorite contemporary books slash who are some of your favorite contemporary writers?
Mm. Oh, sorry, I just got a text saying fuck Peter Jackson. I really like Sayaka Murata, um, the Japanese author. I really identify with her as like a sort of like more extreme version of like how I feel about things. Um, yeah, that's one example.
Okay.
I don't
And
know,
what
like sometimes when you get to an interview for a bookshop, they're like, can you give us like 10 books, front list books that you can like advertise? I'm like, I don't know 10 books.
Emily, do you have an answer?
Yeah, I like who do I like? I like Jen Began a lot. She wrote Big Swiss.
Mm. I
Um,
also like that book.
yeah, that's who comes to mind off the top of my head, but there's definitely yeah. I would struggle to come up with 10 off the cuff, but if you gave me a little bit of time, I could.
Very fair. Okay, and then we have on a structural, the comment is on a structural level, your novel reminds me a lot of classic novels, lots of introspection, ending with a wedding, spoilers, among other things. And I was wondering if this was something that you were thinking about while you were writing it.
I don't think I've read a classic novel before. So no, like I guess not. I think that because I had to submit this for my master's, a lot of the exam report was like comparing it to Emma,
Hmm,
which I had not read. Later saw the movie, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know because I don't know any like classic novels, especially because like I studied German literature, so I sort of like do have this like lit background, but it's not the right stuff.
got it. Okay, that makes sense. And then we've got another one of a person who says, "Love the book, congrats on the wider release, and is super interested in the extent to which mystery is happening in the book. Sometimes, and trying not to spoil anything, the audience is at the forefront of trying to find something out, and they eventually will, and sometimes readers won't get an answer. How do you find out when the readers will be able to handle ambiguity and when they won't?"
Oh, that's hard because I think that readers are sometimes like they come in with like a mean eye to a book. I think because like books are so associated with like criticism that I think that like sometimes people are reading books being like, like wanting to know if is this a good book or a bad book. So you can't get too wild with it, I think. But also like if you like put in a mystery and it's too ambiguous and people just don't notice
Mm-hmm.
that they were supposed to be like, someone will be like, oh, where's this person? And they'll say, oh, they're not here. And then just sort of like leave it as that. Whereas like maybe you as the author are like, oh, because they are like doing this like terrible thing. And that's the mystery. But yeah, I don't know. Uh I like mysteries. It's not a good answer. Yeah, I guess it is a balance, but I think that is not so bad. Like if you make it too if you make it too ambiguous and people just don't notice that it's even in there.
Awesome. And then we had one anonymous attendee write, "Emily ran out of time for this question, but I would actually love to hear more about the role of Auckland in the novel and your approach to the in place in general, including the international locations that Baldwin travels to."
Ah, yeah, like I like see the book in Auckland because I'm from Auckland, and when I like live here, but I didn't live here when I wrote the book. I lived in Wellington. Um, and there's not that many Auckland novels. I think it's just like seen as like less interesting than sort of like the like aspects of New Zealand that make it sort of exceptional is not like a city with 1.7 million people. Like that's not like globally astounding or anything, but like that's what I know. And that's like what I think is like interesting, what I can write about. So that's why I was doing that. Um, and then I don't know, I was a fool with some of the rest of the stuff because I've been to maybe like 5 countries in South America, but not the 2 that are in the book. So then you really have to like, oh God, you're like on the maps, like on Google Maps, being like, okay, like this is what it looks like. Like this is like trying to like Google like places to eat that are open, and then say, okay, this is like the sort of thing that they would have. This is like where would you buy a phone charger in Medellin? Like just like Google that, look at some shops, try to like make some stuff up. But I think that without doing massive spoilers, the reason why I had to sort of set some of the scenes in Colombia were due to the law around what queer people can and can't do in different countries. And I was like, this is one of the only places where this is like legal. So
Hmm.
off the characters go.
Interesting. Then we had a question from Logan who says, "This might be a bit broad, but why is this book important to you?"
Oh, like I don't know, like why I want to. I guess there's like 2 answers in that. Like, why did I want to tell this story, or like how has this impacted my life? Which was like, well, I don't have to work at the call center anymore. And people are sending me so many emails, so that's like obviously made a huge impact in my life. I was like so depressed before I was an author. But I guess like why is the story important to me? Like I don't know, it really is not that important to me. I don't think that like every book is like I like it and it's important to me internally, but I don't think that like this particular story is something that I was like bursting to tell or something like that, which like I know some books are, but I don't feel like this was like that for me.
Right. Emily, do you have an answer as to why Greta and Valdin is important to you?
For me personally, I loved like learning more about the geographic and like area and the representation of the identities that I don't know much about. Like I know very little about being Maori, for example, and you know, like I'm Canadian. It's not really so I really appreciated it for that. And I'm interested in reading more books that do similar things. So I don't know if those are going to come from you, Rebecca, if you have any recommended books. If not, I'll just wait for your next one.
Yeah, I definitely okay. I should add that like that was definitely important to me to represent Maori culture in a way that was different from books that already existed because I think there's a massive variety of books, but I think the ones that are the most well known and the most sort of like important, but also just like popular are very negative
Okay.
or you know, like are real but are like rooted in sort of like violence.
Right.
And I was like, I want to write a book that shows the reality of people who are suffering in minor ways, but maybe like not with that because that, you know, hasn't been part of my life. Like criminality and such is like not something that I have very much experience with. So I was like, well, I'm another type of person and we should see people like that reflected in our media as well.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the most sort of like emotionally like impactful story.
I think in ways it is though, because it's so there's I don't know, like I think the characters you have written are like really feel like real people, and there's so much there is a mixture of some levels of sadness in it, but there's also this humor and joy to it that I think, you know, it's not like I haven't read very many books that
Mm.
um like what you're referring to there, but it's nice to have stories that are like that too. So I think
Yeah, I think that is nice. I think that is nice, but I think that sort of like the like frivolous aspects of it sort of like feel overstated, like in a canon where most of the books are about like gang violence and murder, things like that.
right.
And we've had another really good question. Could you talk more about the decision to include other points of view characters at the end after the main two? I've loved it so much that I haven't seen it in other novels.
Oh, that was like for me, that was something that I felt like I was like sneaking past. Like I don't know if you've like felt like this with publication that there's always like something in the book that you're like, someone is gonna tell me that I'm not allowed to do this.
Yeah.
Like this, but you know, it's usually like this bit's too long, this joke is like too specific, or I don't know, something like that. This is like kind of extraneous to the plot. But definitely that for me, I was like, it would be cool if we could just show like get a bit of perspective on how much like these two main characters actually know about what's going on and like what is going on for other people because you know, they're only two perspectives in like even like just a family that has like so much other stuff going on. And I wanted to like include that, but I really thought that someone was going to tell me that that wasn't allowed. Even like, they even got like different, I haven't heard the audiobook, but they like even got different narrators to be those people.
Oh, cool.
That's nice.
It's just like I was not expecting.
We have a question for Emily in here, which I feel like we have to go for because the Grammys just happened. Because it says, Emily, at the end of your book, you acknowledge the influence of Boy Genius. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So yeah. I and you mentioned Julian Baker, Rebecca. So
Mhm.
I listened to the song Souvenir a lot when I wrote interesting facts about space. And I think of that as being like thematically related to the book. There's a line
Like
in the
sitting
book.
next to this signed
Oh, oh,
bunch cover.
oh. Kindred. Yeah. That is there's like a line in that song in particular that says, if you cut a hole into my skull, do you hate what you see like I do? And I see that as being really uh thematically connected to that book. So that's why I acknowledge them there.
The Boy Genius lyric that I feel like most connected to at the moment from like doing all these like written Q&As is trick after trick, I make the magic and you unrelentingly ask for the secret. So just
Oh,
answering all these things about like, how do you write a book that's, is like a national bestseller? Like, I
right.
can't just tell you that.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, it just happened. It's, yeah, like, you have to like trust in the like magic of literature a little bit and not sort of like, I don't like the stuff that like breaks down like, this is how you get an agent and like this
Oh,
is
yeah.
how like you write you can like finish a book in 6 months or whatever. Like I just think that we should like move away from this
Yeah.
style of living.
I agree. It feels very like well, it's capitalist, right? Like the very
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's
oriented how to make
capitalist.
it into a business and you're like, I wrote a story. I'm trying to share my
Yeah, it's like is it like a very strange position to be in where you are sort of like like what role do you play in society? I'm like a storyteller, but also
yeah,
like I need to sell like a certain number of these stories or they're not gonna let me write another one or I'm gonna get a royalty check of $0.
right. It's a weird, yeah, it's weird.
It's a weird place.
Okay, so we've got time for a couple more questions. I have a couple questions in my that I have thought about, which Rebecca, so in the marketing of the book, they kind of talk about perfect for fans of Schitt's Creek. Have you watched Schitt's Creek? Did you like it? Thoughts on that?
I watched Schitt's Creek after this happened. So I was like, oh, I'm like viewing it from the position of like I see it,
Yeah,
but it's like not exactly what I like, I see it as a marketing
right.
thing, but like in reality, I'm like, these people are much more shouty than anyone in this country is, and they're Canadian.
They're Canadian.
It's not like known to be like a super shouty culture. But I see that like you could like if you like took this sort of relationship and maybe like some aspects of this sort of humor and then made it like into literary fiction, then I can see it.
There's a vibe. There's like
There's
a
a vibe.
the humor of it, and there's some things like, the family, like there's a family element that's really critical and things like that. I can see it, but yeah, it's its own distinct thing too.
And then the question we always like to end on as we get close to the end time is what are both of you reading right now?
I recently read
Oh.
a book called I'll just take it first so that you can think about it if you're called Never Been Better by Leanne Toshiko Simpson. And it's about three friends who met in a psychiatric ward. And I'm not gonna be able to summarize it well, but one of the three thinks that she's in love with this man who's marrying the other one. So there's a bit of a problem there. And it's pitched, just as we were talking about what Rebecca's book, it's pitched as Silver Linings Playbook meets
Oh, interesting.
My Best Friend's Wedding or something like that. I can't remember, but yeah. I haven't
Oh.
read it yet, but it was interesting. And I think the author had I think this is openly said in the information about it, is that the author has experience being in a psychiatric ward. So it was felt really like that element of it felt really real and interesting. So it's called Never Been Better.
Cool. And Rebecca?
I just finished reading Our Lives Under the Sea. Um, it's a very hard book to get in New Zealand. Like even like Emily, I was trying to buy your book last week and it's like not here yet. Like this is six.
Thanks for trying.
They're so mean to us with the like book distribution.
Oh, and plants.
Um, and the plants, like like
Plants and
I
books. Those
know
are
that
some of the
we
best
like
things.
live in an island like 3 hours flight away from the nearest place, but like come on, like
Right.
give us more stuff. Open the borders. No, I don't think that. Of course I like love the native birds. Um, Yeah, I read Our Eyes Under the Sea. It's like very like up my alley because I love creatures. Like I love when like a person goes wrong, as they would say in the book. In the book, the woman's wife is on a submarine research trip and then comes back wrong and then sort of like starts like deteriorating in a surreal way. And I like it's like it's hard for me because that's the kind of book that I like, but it's not the kind of book that I write. So I think that like when I get like asked for like comp titles and stuff, I'm like, I don't know, I just like read books about creatures. There's
I've
no
read that book.
creatures in my book.
It gave me the heebie-jeebies. I was frightened as I was reading it.
It made me feel happy. It's like such a basic word. It made me feel happy because like I don't know, I've been struggling to like, produce a second novel. Um and then I was like, oh yeah, that's how it's done.
Well, hey, we'll
You
take
just do it. It just begins, all this stuff happens and ends.
easy peasy, just like that.
It's so easy.
Well, that is our time. I want to thank you both so much for your awesome conversation. I loved hearing the little chuckles back and forth and all the fun questions. And I have already listened to my best friend's 15-minute voice note after finishing the book. And now I feel like I've listened to another wonderful little voice note about how excited we are for this book. If you've not already purchased a copy from us, you can on our website. You can also purchase a copy of any of Emily's books on our website and check out the other upcoming events we have and the upcoming book clubs we have. We've got so much happening all the time, and it's great. So thank you all for being here tonight. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for chatting.